There comes a moment in your life where you must understand that being smart is not just about IQ, degrees, or diplomas. It's not about how much you know, but how well you protect what you've learned. Smart people, truly wise people, have mastered something most never talk about. They have learned how to set boundaries without bitterness. You see, when you've lived a little, you come to understand that not everybody who walks with you is for you. Some people are in your life not to bless you but to drain you, distract you, and deplete you. They are not connected to your destiny. They're connected to your history. And if you don't learn to draw the line, they will drag you back to where you escaped from. Smart people don't just cut people off in anger. No, they build fences with wisdom. There's a difference. Hear me clearly. Boundaries are not about hate. They are about honor. Honor for your mind. Honor for your peace. Honor for your purpose. The Bible says in Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Did you hear that? Guard it. Not just love people blindly, not just let everyone into your inner court. Smart people love you, but they love you from a place of safety. They understand that access is a privilege, not a right. And just because we share the same blood or background, doesn't mean you get unrestricted access to my spirit. Some of you have been wounded, not because you weren't good to people, but because you didn't know when to say enough. You kept extending grace while they were extending chaos. You kept answering texts that disturbed your peace. You kept showing up for people who never once checked in on your soul, and smart people know. There comes a point where love must include limits. Boundaries aren't bitterness. Bitterness says, I hate you. Boundaries say, I value me. There's a difference. Bitterness seeks revenge. Boundaries seek recovery. Bitterness says, I'm going to get back at you. Boundaries say, I'm going to get back to myself. Smart people know that if they don't protect their emotional space, toxic people will build a tent in their mind and live rent-free. And some of you have tenants in your heart that should have been evicted years ago. Let me teach this like I feel it. Toxic people are often persistent. They don't respect hints. They don't pick up on subtle cues. They only respond to clear, firm, unapologetic boundaries. Smart people don't waste time dropping hints. They don't waste time trying to explain their standards to people committed to misunderstanding them. They simply adjust the access. They don't raise their voice. They raise their standards. And oh yes, smart people understand that you don't have to fight to prove your value. When someone is toxic, they'll try to bait you into debates, pull you into arguments, provoke reactions to justify their dysfunction. But smart people don't react. They respond. They don't get pulled into the chaos. They stay rooted in clarity because they understand that the goal is not to win an argument, it's to preserve alignment. Toxic people thrive in emotional storms. Smart people learn to be the calm and listen. Smart people don't hold grudges, but they do hold wisdom. They forgive, but they don't forget the lessons. See, forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, but boundaries are a gift you give to your future. Don't confuse the two. Smart people understand that reconciliation and restoration are not the same. You can be healed and still not reconnected. You can release the offense and still refuse the relationship. God did not call you to be a doormat. He called you to be a disciple. And part of being a disciple is having discernment, knowing who belongs in your circle and who belongs in your prayers from a distance. Jesus himself didn't entrust himself to everyone. He had the crowd, the 70, the 12, the 3, and even one he called beloved. He knew how to manage access. Why? Because proximity without purpose is dangerous, and smart people treat their emotional space like a sacred temple, not a public playground. So if you've been feeling guilty for finally setting a boundary, hear this clearly. You are not being rude, you are being responsible. You are not being distant, you are being deliberate. You are not being mean, you are being mature. Smart people don't operate out of emotion, they operate out of vision. They know that the cost of letting the wrong people too close is too expensive for the calling they carry. There is nothing holy about tolerating abuse. There is nothing noble about staying in a toxic environment just to keep the peace. Smart people understand. Peace that costs you your purpose is not peace. It's a prison. And God didn't deliver you just for you to stay bound to dysfunction. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed, and that freedom must extend to your friendships, your conversations, your habits, and your boundaries. Smart people don't wait until they're broken to act. They act before it gets that far. They move from discernment, not desperation. They set boundaries early, speak clearly, and walk in wisdom, because they understand that the quality of their life will always be connected to the quality of who they allow into it. So if you're going to walk in destiny, you must protect your energy. If you're going to fulfill purpose, you must be wise with your presence, because smart people know the anointing is too precious to waste on toxicity. The peace is too deep to let it be disturbed, and the calling is too great to be delayed by drama. There are moments in life where wisdom requires you to make hard decisions, silent, painful, necessary decisions, not out of anger, but out of awareness. Smart people have learned something that most people struggle with all their lives. Distance is not disrespect, it is deliverance. There are some environments, some relationships, and some people that you don't escape from by confrontation. You escape by separation. Not every war is won with words. Some victories come through walking away. You must understand, my friend, that just because you love someone doesn't mean they're healthy for your destiny. The truth is, some people are a part of your story, but they are not a part of your assignment. And when you confuse the two, you will spend years trying to save what God already told you to leave. There are people who meant you well in one season, but became toxic in the next. And smart people have learned to release what no longer aligns, even if it hurts. Let me tell you, smart people don't see walking away as failure. They see it as freedom. They don't feel guilty for creating space. They feel responsible. Because when you truly understand your purpose, you realize that who surrounds you is just as important as what's inside you. A toxic atmosphere can suffocate even the most gifted people. And if you're not careful, you'll be praying for elevation while staying planted in poisoned soil. Sometimes you have to leave, not because you're better than them, but because you're called to better than this. Staying in toxic relationships doesn't prove loyalty. It only delays destiny, and the devil is a liar. There is nothing holy about enduring what is harming your soul. There is nothing godly about tolerating people who continuously break your spirit. Smart people say, I love you, but I have to love you from over there. I care, but I cannot stay connected. I forgive, but I cannot stay entangled. You can't heal in the same place that hurt you. You can't find peace in the same place that keeps you in pieces. And smart people have learned that deliverance isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a decision. Sometimes it's a phone call you don't return, a dinner you don't attend, a door you don't reopen. It doesn't need to come with a speech. It doesn't need to end in a fight. Just a shift in your spirit that says, I'm done carrying this weight. Because here's what smart people know, not everyone can go with you. You can't bring Egypt into the promised land. You can't drag people into places they're not willing to grow into. And if you try, you'll end up compromising your own growth just to make them comfortable. That's not kindness, that's captivity. That's not loyalty, that's limitation. And God didn't bring you this far to be held back by dysfunction you should have left behind. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to walk away, because staying would only enable the toxicity to grow. When you remain in unhealthy environments, you become complicit in your own suffering. And smart people don't confuse long-term exposure with effectiveness. Just because you've known them for years doesn't mean they're healthy for your journey now. The past is a place of reference, not residence. Smart people understand the power of silence. They don't argue their way out. They exit with grace. They don't announce their departure. They simply shift, Because when the fruit of the relationship is consistent pain, confusion, or chaos, it's not your job to fix it. It's your job to face it. And if facing it means leaving it, then that is what deliverance demands. Let me go deeper. Deliverance doesn't always look like shouting or laying on the floor. Sometimes deliverance is you finally telling yourself, I deserve better than this. Deliverance is you reclaiming your schedule, your mind, your joy. Deliverance is when you stop explaining your boundaries to people who disrespect them. Deliverance is not just a spiritual experience. It is a mental decision to preserve what God is doing in your life. You were never created to be drained daily. You were never meant to constantly defend your worth. You were never designed to beg for respect or plead for peace. That's not relationship. That's robbery. That's not connection. That's contamination, and smart people know when the cost of connection is too high for their calling. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Just walk. Walk away from the manipulation. Walk away from the emotional roller coasters. Walk away from the passive aggression. Walk away from the people who only want you when they need something. Walk away from the environments that require you to shrink just to survive. Because your calling demands clarity, and clarity requires clean air. Don't stay somewhere just because you're afraid to be alone. There is a difference between being alone and being abandoned. Sometimes God isolates you not to punish you, but to prepare you. Sometimes He separates you from people to sanctify your soul. And smart people understand that isolation can be a setup for elevation. So yes, sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is walk. Not out of hate, not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of peace, out of wisdom, out of alignment, because the oil on your life is too valuable to keep spilling it in places that don't honor it. The gift is too sacred. The calling is too great, and smart people protect it. Not just with prayer, but with proximity. Walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not quitting. It's qualifying for more, because when God begins to open doors, you don't want to be entangled with people who will close them behind you. And when He starts lifting you, you don't want to carry weights that were never assigned to you. Distance is not a punishment. It is preparation, and smart people understand that sometimes the path to peace is paved by parting ways. Smart people don't allow toxic people to drag them into emotional quicks, and they've learned through fire, through failure, and through faith that reacting is not the same as responding. And if you want to survive in a world filled with chaos, criticism, and conflict, you must be intentional about one thinking, rolling your response. Toxic people don't feed off truth. They don't even feed off facts. They feed off reactions. They stir the pot to see if you'll spill your piece. They poke at your insecurities, press your buttons, and then act surprised when you explode. But smart people, oh, they've learned the art of restraint. They know that just because someone throws bait doesn't mean you have to bite. Just because someone provokes you doesn't mean you have to participate. Wisdom says, pause before you speak, think before you type, step back before you engage. Because reaction is impulsive, but response is intentional, and there's a big difference between emotional impulse and spiritual maturity. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to match energy. You don't have to stoop low to prove a point. Smart people know, if you keep matching energy with fools, you'll wake up one day and forget you were called to lead. Jesus never reacted. He responded. He didn't panic in storms, didn't retaliate when provoked, didn't argue with critics. He had authority, but he also had composure, and that composure wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was power under control. You don't have to scream to be strong. You don't have to post it to be proven. You don't have to lose yourself just because someone else already lost themselves. Some of you are mentally and spiritually exhausted, not because of what happened, but because of how much energy you've been wasting trying to react to every offense, every slight, every shady comment, every manipulative move. But smart people know how to protect their peace like a fortress. They've learned that some things don't deserve a reply, some texts don't need an answer, some conversations don't need to be had. Why? Because your peace is more valuable than their chaos. You've got to know the difference between a battle and a trap. You've got to know the difference between defending yourself and being baited into distraction. Not everything that feels like an attack requires a counterattack. Smart people have learned that silence can be a strategy, that walking away isn't always weakness. It's wisdom, and keeping your dignity doesn't mean you lost. It means you refuse to fight a war not worth winning. Listen to me, reacting is easy. Anybody can react. The flesh reacts. Immature people react, but wise people respond. They pause, they pray, they process. They don't just ask, "How do I feel?" They ask, "What is right? What is wise? What serves my purpose?" Because your destiny is too great to waste on debates that don't change anything, let them think you're soft. Let them say you're passive. Let them call you fake. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing maturity over mess. Smart people understand that reputation is what people say about you, but character is what God knows about you. And when your character is solid, you don't have to chase down every lie. You don't have to prove anything. You let the fruit of your life speak for itself. Toxic people want a reaction because it gives them power. But the moment you stop reacting, you starve their influence. The moment you stop feeding the fire, the flames begin to die. Smart people aren't emotionally cold. They're emotionally disciplined. They feel, but they don't follow every feeling. They're aware, but not reactive. They're strong enough to stand in the storm and still smile with grace. Because here's the truth. Your emotional maturity is not seen in how you act when things are good. It's revealed in how you respond when you're triggered, tested, or attacked. That's when your real strength shows up. Not in applause, but in restraint. And restraint doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much to let foolishness derail your future. Some of you are wasting purpose arguing with people who aren't even walking in the same direction as you. Let it go. Stop engaging what God already told you to ignore. You're better than the bait. You're bigger than the pettiness. And you're called to more than emotional wars. Smart people understand that self-control is spiritual warfare. It's not passive, it's powerful. When you hold your tongue, that's warfare. When you choose peace over pettiness, that's warfare. When you let them talk and you keep building, that's warfare. Because every time you don't react, you win a battle that toxic people never saw coming. So take a breath, guard your tone, choose your battles. And most of all, protect your purpose. Don't react out of woundedness. Respond out of wisdom, because smart people know, if you're always fighting people, you'll never have time to fight for your future. And if you don't master your response, you will surrender your peace to people who were never assigned to your purpose. You're not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You're not required to respond just because someone shouted your name. When you're walking with God, you don't need to clap back. You just keep stepping forward, because when you stay focused, even your silence becomes a strategy. Even your stillness becomes a sermon. Smart people, wise people, spiritual people, don't let toxic people write the script for their emotions. They don't give them the pen. They don't hand over the keys to their joy. They say, "I see it, I feel it, but I won't react to it." That's not weakness. That's dominion, and that kind of strength doesn't shout, it stands. One of the most underestimated traits of smart people, truly wise people, is the ability to observe in silence. You see, toxic people move loudly, but smart people move wisely. Smart people are not quick to react, quick to speak, or quick to judge. Instead, they master the discipline of watching, of studying patterns, weighing behaviors, discerning intentions, because they understand that discernment is developed through observation. Smart people don't jump into conclusions. They watch consistency, because a person can only fake character for so long. Eventually, Who they are will start leaking through what they say. That's why smart people listen when people talk, but they trust what people do. They know that the truth is not in the words, it's in the walk, it's in the patterns, it's in the fruit. Jesus said, "You will know them by their fruit," not by their charisma, not by their charm, not by their compliments, not even by their promises, but by their fruit. Smart people don't get intoxicated by flattery, because they know that toxic people often use praise as a distraction. They say what you want to hear so they can get what they want to take. But smart people keep their ears open and their spirit alert. They don't just hear tone, they hear truth. They don't just see faces, they watch actions. It's not that smart people don't carrots, that they care enough to examine. They take their time before they trust. They don't give their loyalty to everybody who smiles. They don't give their time to everybody who shows up, because they understand that access must be earned, not assumed. Toxic people rush relationships. They push for closeness before consistency, but smart people are patient. They let time tell the truth. Let me tell you something. Patterns don't lie. A person's pattern of communication, how they speak under pressure, how they treat people they don't need, how they behave when they're angry, those are the real indicators of who they are. Smart people are not swayed by moments. They look at momentum. They don't judge a person by one good day or one bad day. They judge them by who they consistently are when no one is looking. Toxic people often wear masks, but smart people don't get fooled by the mask because they take their time. They understand that character is revealed in silence. When you're quiet, when you're not trying to impress them, when you're just watching, that's when truth shows up. That's when real motives start to emerge. That's when hidden agendas start surfacing. And if you rush past that process, you'll end up inviting someone into your space who was never sent to bless you. They were sent to bleed you. Smart people don't always confront immediately. Sometimes they step back. They gather data. They give people space to reveal themselves. And trust me, given enough time, people always reveal themselves. You don't have to force the truth. The truth walks into the light all by itself. And while toxic people manipulate with urgency, smart people lean on patience. Because the wise know that what's rushed is rarely real. Discernment isn't suspicion. It's observation guided by peace. And smart people don't assume. They ask. They watch, they verify, they don't build their trust on a single act of kindness. They build it on a lifestyle of character. They don't confuse apology with accountability. They don't confuse tears with transformation. They know that real change is proven, not promised. Some of you have been hurt not because you were too emotional, but because you didn't wait long enough to see the pattern. You gave the benefit of the doubt when you should have waited for the consistency of the truth. Smart people know, if someone shows you who they are more than once, believe them, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Toxic people want you to react. Smart people choose to reflect. Toxic people want to pull you into their cycle. Smart people stand back and recognize the signs. They don't get emotionally entangled before they've done spiritual discernment, and that's why they stay free. That's why they don't have to keep healing from the same type of pain over and over again. Because once you've seen the pattern, you don't need another apology. You need to make a decision. Let me make it plain. Smart people trust the slow reveal. They understand that spiritual maturity doesn't happen in fast forward. You've got to let the process play out. Don't rush to call someone a friend. Don't rush to call someone your partner. Wait and watch the fruit. Watch how they handle pressure. Watch how they react to boundaries. Watch how they treat people when there's no advantage involved. That's where the truth is, and when they see the truth, smart people adjust. They don't keep pretending. They don't keep hoping a red flag will turn green. They don't keep giving what was only meant to be observed. They adjust the access, change the category, and protect their peace. Because wisdom is not just knowing the truth, it's acting on it. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You just need to open your eyes, observe, pay attention, because smart people understand that discernment is the difference between being damaged and being delivered. And if you're going to rise, if you're going to grow, if you're going to walk in purpose, you've got to stop giving emotional VIP passes to people who haven't earned basic trust. You've got to move from impulse to insight, from reacting to watching, from hoping to discerning. Because when you master the art of quiet observation, you'll stop falling for what looks good and start recognizing what's truly right. Smart people don't waste their energy trying to change toxic people. They focus that energy on changing their environment. They've come to understand that you can't control who people are, but you can absolutely control how close they get to your peace. You can't force someone to respect your value, but you can set the boundaries that protect it. Let me tell you something. Some people are so used to chaos, they think peace is the problem. They're so used to dysfunction, they think boundaries are betrayal. But when you've been through enough storms, you start to recognize the cost of leaving your door open to anyone who knocks. And smart people, they don't leave the gates of their heart unguarded. They don't leave their purpose exposed. They know that protecting your space is not selfish. It's spiritual survival. Toxic people thrive in access. They feed off permission. They manipulate environments where the lines are blurred, the standards are unclear, and the expectations are weak. But the moment you establish clear, firm, and consistent boundaries, the moment you start choosing order over chaos, they either shift or they leave, and either outcome is a blessing. Smart people understand that boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are filters to keep your soul clean. They don't block people out of bitterness. They do it out of balance, because if you don't manage your space, someone else will. If you don't define your peace, someone else will rewrite it with their dysfunction. And before long, you'll be living in a house that doesn't reflect the harmony you're trying to build, but the mess someone else keeps bringing in. You've got to be bold enough to say, this is where my peace begins, and this is where your chaos ends. That's not rude. That's not arrogant. That's wise. That's healing. That's what smart people do when they realize their calling can't grow in a contaminated climate. Let me help you with this. You don't have to explain your boundaries to everyone. You don't need permission to protect your emotional health. Toxic people will accuse you of being cold, distant, or changing when you start drawing lines, but you've got to understand, that's just resistance to the new rules. They're not mad because you changed. They're mad because they can't control the access they once had. Smart people keep the access key in their own pocket. They decide who enters, how long they stay, and under what conditions. Because access without accountability is an open door for emotional robbery. And you can't keep giving people the ability to drain you and then blame them for being thieves. At some point, you have to admit that you left the vault open. Some of you have been suffering in silence, not because you're weak, but because you haven't established your space. Your phone is always available. Your calendar is always open. Your boundaries are always negotiable. And that's why you feel exhausted, because peace was never meant to be passive. Peace is protected by people who are intentional about what they allow. Smart people know how to say no without guilt. They know how to say, I'm not available for that drama. I'm not entertaining that conversation. I'm not accepting that tone, not because they're mean, but because they're wise enough to manage their emotional ecosystem. They know what drains them, they know what feeds them, and they adjust accordingly. You have to understand, it is not your job to fix what someone else won't acknowledge. You are not responsible for changing toxic people. You are responsible for choosing not to stay poisoned by them. If they don't want to grow, that's on them. But if you keep letting them close, that's on you. You can't rise while carrying what's meant to be released. You can't expand while holding on to what shrinks you, and you can't move into your future with people who keep pulling you into the past. That's why boundaries are not just emotional. They are prophetic. They speak to your future. They declare what you will and will not allow as you walk into the next season. Let me go deeper. Boundaries are not just about saying no to others. They are also about saying yes to your growth, yes to your health, yes to your purpose, yes to your future. Because when you clear out the space that toxicity once filled, you create room for clarity, vision, and divine alignment. There's the reason why God told Abraham to leave his father's house. Because some atmospheres carry familiar spirits that can't go with you into the new thing God wants to do. And some of you are being called to build something new, but you're still tolerating people who only know how to tear things down. You're trying to move forward with people who are committed to keeping you emotionally stuck. Smart people stop trying to fix toxic people. They fix the gate, they fix the standard, they fix the access point. They say, you can't keep speaking that way and expect me to listen. You can't keep showing up in crisis and expect me to drop everything. You can't keep disrespecting me and think the relationship will remain the same. And when they do that, when they take responsibility for their space, they begin to walk in peace, not just temporary peace, but sustained peace, peace that isn't shaken every time someone else acts up, peace that isn't stolen every time someone else gets triggered, peace that stands because it's built on boundaries that don't bend for dysfunction. That's how smart people treat toxic people, not with hate, not with bitterness, but with strategic distance and unwavering standards, because your peace is sacred, your calling is holy, and your time is far too precious to keep wasting it on people who are committed to misunderstanding you. So, after everything we've walked through, after every truth we've laid bare, let me leave you with this. Smart people don't just survive toxic people. They outgrow them. They rise, they elevate, they discern, they respond with wisdom, not emotion. They don't waste years trying to fix what was never their assignment to fix. They understand that freedom is not found in controlling others. It's found in mastering yourself. Toxic people may never change. They may never apologize. They may never own their behavior, but that's not where your power lies. Your power is in your response. Your healing is in your boundaries. Your peace is in your discipline, and your destiny is in your decisions. You've got to stop trying to bring peace into places God already told you to walk away from. You've got to stop shrinking to fit into atmospheres that choke your spirit. And you've got to stop handing the keys to your joy over to people who can't even manage their own. This is not about pride. This is about purpose. This is not about arrogance. This is about assignment. Because every minute you spend fighting with dysfunction is a minute you lose from building your destiny, and you are too gifted, too anointed, too called, too important to waste another season negotiating with toxicity. God didn't call you to be a firefighter for everyone else's drama. He called you to build, to rise, to lead, to heal, to create, to thrive. But you cannot do that while surrounded by people who poison your peace and sabotage your focus. So take the lessons, take the wisdom, and move forward. Release the need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Release the need to prove your worth to people too blind to see it, and release the weight of relationships that only exist to drain, distract, and derail your progress. Because when you finally step out of the circle of toxicity, when you finally rise above the chaos, you'll find that clarity lives at a higher altitude, and that peace that surpasses all understanding, that peace becomes your portion. Not when others change, but when you do. So walk with wisdom, set your standards, guard your space, control your response, and never forget. How you handle toxic people will determine how far you rise in your God-given purpose. Now go forward. Not just smart, but strong. Not just wise, but unshakable. And may every step you take be a step toward peace, power, and divine alignment. Amen.